So in this video we will be building the part 2 of our PropTech website. Now I'll just quickly show some of the updates that we will achieve by the end of this video. So the first thing to note here is that we will be making these thumbnails much wider and filling the space. We'll be adding icons for number of bedrooms, number of rooms, and then we will update our property listing page, and we will have a estimate for the monthly repayments of a mortgage for that property. We'll show additional details about the estate agent, the person who's letting this property or selling this property. And we'll have this description area where we can hide and expand for more information. And then we'll have other properties listed by that agent or that real estate agent. And you can click through to those, and again here you can see that the mortgage price is different based on that property. So that will be the main focus of this video. It will be mostly on updating this profile page for each of the properties, but we will also be adding additional functionality to make the website more responsive, so you can view it on iPad and mobile devices and it will still look quite good. So here you can see we'll scale it down and everything fits quite well. And then down on mobile size, we've pushed everything to be full width. And yeah, well, overall it should look quite good by the end of this video. Work across multiple device sizes. So with that out of the way, let's hop into this video and start to put this together. So this is where we've left it in our previous video. Now if you haven't seen the previous video yet, you can check that out. I will add a link on the information below. So let's begin with updating the property listing page. So we'll have the details for this one individual property, and at the top of this page we're going to say that this property is for sale, and if it has a price associated with this property then we will show that price instead, and we'll also include an address here at the top to give the user some information about this property and to see if it's a good match for them. So we can tighten the spacing up here by adding a class. And what we want here is to add this additional section for calculating the home loans. So we want to add a division there and a 2-column layout to show that information. So let's update our HTML to fit with this new design. And while I update this markup here, I just want to remind you guys, if you enjoy this content, to subscribe to the channel and check out some of my other videos on building MVPs and popular app clones using Ruby on Rails. And you can also get this code on my website. I do sell some of these MVPs as a finished product. I normally tidy them up a little bit at the end and improve things and sell a very light version of that platform to startups that want to basically create a new business. So getting back to the video now, we are adding additional information here to show the number of rooms, the number of parking spaces, and the number of bathrooms. So kind of like we see on the other website we were comparing to. And we can do that by simply creating a new column here. So we'll create a column of 6, so that's half of the width of that space. And then we will create separate divs to wrap those values in for rooms, bathrooms, and parking spaces. And one thing to note here is that in our previous video we did not add parking spaces to the property. So let's add a new migration for this. And we will store a value for that as an integer. And then we can set the default for that to 0. So we don't want that field to be blank. We want it to be 0 if there are no car parking spaces available. So now we can add this to our property form. So when we're adding a new property, we can input this parking spaces value. And we'll also need to add it within the controller for properties. So we'll whitelist that field. And now we can see those values on our show view for our property. Now it doesn't look amazing right now. Let's update this to make the the appearance to look a little bit better for these values. So we can put those 3 values in a row, and we can make the number bigger and maybe even add a background color. So let's try to tidy this up and make it look much nicer than it currently is. So we will add a column layout of 4 columns for each of these values, and then we will make sure that the information is bolded. So the title for each of these values is bolded, and then we'll add a class of lead. So that's a bootstrap class to make the text stand out more. And then finally we will add a background color to make this information more prominent, make it stand out more against the background. And that's starting to look pretty good right now. It's quite clear what this information is about, and it looks quite presentable to the user. So we can also add a margin here to the right to separate this from the right column. And we can update the padding. But overall it looks pretty good. I think that's good enough for us to continue on with. So now let's make an update to our for sale heading at the top. So if we have a price for this property, we want to show that price, and otherwise then we'll just show this for sale text. And we can convert that price into a currency using the number to currency helper. So that's pre-built as part of Ruby on Rails, and we can see here that it got the dollar value now for the property. But what we could also do here is remove this decimal point on this number. So we can just pass in a precision of 0, and it removes that decimal point and the values after it. So now we want to add this extra section that we mentioned before to show the mortgage repayments if you take out a loan for this property. So let's set up the layout for this. And we will just add the text here to say estimated monthly repayments of, and we will use the number to currency helper again, and we will pass in the price of the property. And what we want to do here is basically calculate this based on a 30-year mortgage. So that's the default mortgage, and then if you divide that by the number of months, we've got 360. And we should be able to just calculate this and give a value per month. So we can also use the precision again. So now let's clean up the design. We will add a border to the top and the bottom, and then we'll add some padding to create some space around this. And then we could also add a margin here to push the content above and below out of the way of this section. So that's starting to look better. So now underneath here we want to add the property description. So we'll have a title for that. And then underneath the title we will output the description. And we can remove some of this information like the name, address, because we already have this on our property right now. So let's clean this up and take out this extra information here. And we can style up our estimated monthly repayments. So we can add a strong tag for this and make the text green. Something a bit like what we're seeing here. And we'll add this extra text, can I afford this property? And this will point out to a new page, but we don't have to add a link for that right now. You can just add a dummy link, and that's something that would probably point to a static page to give some advice to the user. So let's move this to the right. And you can also make this one a link same way. and we'll just copy in the class for this from the other link. And that seems to be working quite well. So let's remove this extra information underneath. So we'll also have this expand description area, but I'm trying to see here where we can put the name of our property, because we don't have that right now on our view apart from at the bottom. So maybe we can put it underneath the property description, but we will remove the address and the price. We can just change this to our details actually. So create a simple format to output our details. Now it looks like we haven't set that up yet, so let's add the details to the property by creating a new migration, and that will be a text field, so there's extra capacity there to put longer description for our property. And then once again we'll add this into our form field and just change this to details. And once again in our controller we will add this additional field to whitelist it. And we can actually log in now just to update this to see how it looks. And I'm just going to copy and paste this description because I don't want to waste any time on this. So let's just paste this in, see how it looks. And we have a typo in our output, our view. So let's change this to simple format. And now it's starting to look much better. That's pretty good looking so far. So what we can do here is probably switch the name of the property and make that the main headline. And then we can make the property description title a little bit smaller and underneath. We can probably make that smaller still. So now let's build this read more, read less functionality. So we should be able to click and toggle to show additional information. So we'll start by adding a wrapper for this. Open a div and give it an ID, prop details. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm closing off all of my divs here. So this is very important to keep the indentation correct in your code, just to make it easier to see at a glance that you're closing things off correctly. So back to our prop details, let's set a height of 150 pixels, and we'll set the overflow to be hidden, and you can see that it cuts off now. So we want to add some information underneath this description just so that we can see what's going on here. So let's add a dummy text, and we'll set a margin bottom, and we can also add that to the text itself. And we'll add a button here now that will be a show more button. So let's style up our button and give it a outline and improve the margin around the button. So that's looking quite good right now. And once we click this, then we want to be able to see the height of that area expand. So let's go back to our JavaScript. Within our packs folder, we are going to create a new directory, and that's going to be includes, and we'll add in here a properties JavaScript file. And we could use just generic vanilla JS to handle the functionality, but I think it's just easier if you have an app that requires a lot of different functionality to select elements, to make AJAX requests. I think it's just easier to use something to handle all of that binding, the binding of the on-click events and everything else. So for that reason, we're going to use jQuery to handle the functionality on this. So in our last video, we did not use Yarn to install jQuery. So what we just did was drop the script into the body of the page and the header of the page. So this time around we're going to improve things by using Yarn to set up jQuery and Bootstrap. So let's do that now. It should only take a couple of minutes. And I'm going to paste in the code I used in the previous video for setting up Webpack with jQuery. And then we will use this code to declare the global variables for jQuery. So the dollar and the global.dollar and window.dollar. And then we'll remove the script from the header and footer, header and body of the page. So we were using the CDN version previously, but now we are actually building it into our app using Yarn. So we can see here that our JavaScript file is being loaded because we're getting this test message in the web console. But we also have to set up our style sheets to use the correct style sheets from Bootstrap. And that is working now, so let's go back to our JavaScript file. And in here we want to say that if this button is clicked, so we'll add an ID for this button called toggle details. So if toggle details is clicked, then we will run this function, and we want to toggle the height on the details section, so the details paragraph for that property. So in our style sheet then we'll add a new class here called open. So if it's open, the height is auto, and just reload the page and try this out. So there's something not quite right here. So we can begin to debug this by adding a console log message to say that this has been clicked, and let's see if that's triggering that click. So I skipped out some of the debugging here, but it turns out that I just needed to change the ID name in my JavaScript to prop details, and that is working now. So let's remove this lorem ipsum text, and we can actually make this related to this monthly repayments value. So we can say there that this number is based on a 30-year mortgage, and just to make it more clear and to make this content relevant to this page. And most properties when being purchased require a down payment. So in this case we're going to deduct a 10% down payment. So we could actually move this code out into a helper class, but for now it's okay. We will just update the calculation within this number to currency helper. So here we will deduct a 10% from the final price, as that will be paid up front by the buyer. And that brings that monthly number down now, and we have that additional text at the bottom. So going back to our dashboard now, you can see here that there is no easy way to edit our account. So in order to fix this, we want to add a link to the left sidebar, and we want to tidy up this view for editing our account. So this will allow us to add a profile image and update our name and other details within our account. So I'm just going to paste in some of the formatting I've got from one of the previous apps I've built on the channel. So we don't have a username, so we'll remove that field. We do have a first name, last name, and we have a URL. That will be our profile URL. But we don't have a description right now or a website. We can remove those. And finally then we're missing an image, so let's do a migration to add the image to user accounts. So we're adding our new column here, which is a string, and we'll run that migration. And now we can reload the page, and it is giving us this warning about a image cache. We don't have an image cache field, so we can go back to our application controller and update the values in there. And within our account model, we want to add this uploader file. So we'll mount the uploader, and we will change that to photo uploader. And one thing I forgot to add to the last migration was a company field. So that would be a string just for the real estate agent's company name. So I just rolled back the migration, added that column, and now we can add that to the edit account view. So let's drop that field in. When we reload this here, we can see that there's already a test company value set. And that is because in the first video we set a method within our model for our account, and we set that as a dummy value of test company. So that's why that is showing up here when we reload the page. But we will remove that afterwards to reflect this new company field that is being added. So we're also testing out here, adding our photo and see what's happening here. So let's remove this dummy method first, and we can see it has caused us some issues in terms of saving. And one thing we forgot to add here was the company to the application controller. So we've added that now, and on the sidebar we also want to include a link to edit the account. So let's do that. Just make it easier to get to editing our account information. So we'll duplicate some of the navigation there that is already existing on that sidebar, and then we will add in a settings icon for that, and let's update the link here to use a Rails link, and we'll set that as a path to our edit registration, account registration path. When we open up our server logs, we can see that some of the fields are not being permitted as parameters. So there must be an issue with our application controller. And as it turns out, we must have had a typo in this from the first video. So we'll go ahead and try this again, and hopefully this time things will be working. And this time we can see that the company name has been saved. But the next thing we want to do here is include an image, so the profile image of the agent. So let's go back to our agent details file within the property views, and we'll use a helper here to display the profile picture, and we'll pass in the agent. So let's create a new helper for this, and using our account. So we want to return a thumbnail image for that user, for that account. Otherwise we want to return a placeholder image. So within our photo uploader model, we can see that the aspect ratio is 3:2, but for our profile image we really want that to be a square image, and the reason for that is so that we can add a round image for the profile picture. So we want that to be the same width and same height proportions. So we'll set up a new uploader for the profile picture, and then we'll update that within the account model. And then if the account thumbnail doesn't exist, then we will just return a placeholder JPEG. So let's create a image tag, and this will pass in the thumbnail path, and then we'll add a class here to make this a circular image. So we can see that the image is displaying, but it is not circular. So let's add some CSS to style this image to make it rounded on the outside. And we can also make this image smaller because it's really large right now, and we can pass in an additional parameter just to set the width, and by default then we will set it to 200 pixels. So we can tweak that, make it smaller. So back within our agent details view, we will add a text center on a wrapping div, and we'll add a margin to space the content underneath further down the page. And we can clean this up by just centering everything on that column, and remove some of the text on these buttons. And we can add a border to this and some additional spacing or padding. And that's starting to look much better right now. We can tweak that further, but overall I'm pretty happy with the layout on this. It looks reasonably professional now. And let's test it on the smaller screens, see how it looks. And it looks a little bit strange when you scale the page down to a mobile size. So let's clean that up a little bit. If we go back to our show view, we can define these columns to be only set at different breakpoints. So in this case, the small breakpoint. So changing these columns to use the small breakpoint, it means that on mobile, which is even smaller than the small breakpoint, those columns will be full width of the screen. So that just makes it use the extra space and just really cleans up the view and makes it easier for the user to read. And in Bootstrap 4, you can actually define the border or the margins based on the size of the screen too. So we can set a margin just for the medium breakpoint or the small breakpoint, and that way we can really have a lot more control about spacing out the content on our page in terms of layout. Now the right column does look a bit small when we are in that smaller breakpoint, but we can always tweak this further and change the column layouts till we're happy with the structure of the page. But it's starting to look pretty good right now, I feel like. It's just ensuring that none of the text is overlapping, especially in some of these rooms, bedrooms, statistics. But with some tweaking, it's starting to look really clean, really nice, and overall very happy with the layout of this page. So while I continue to tweak and tidy this up even further, just reminding you guys that if you enjoy this content, do like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps me out and gets my video ranked better on the YouTube algorithm. And hopefully you guys are finding something useful in these videos. I am hoping in the near future to launch a series of courses using Ruby on Rails, React Native to build mobile applications too. So if that's something you guys are interested in, do visit the website and subscribe to the mailing list to be notified when I launch that. But jumping back into the video now, we are going to add some icons using Font Awesome. So we want to add those icons for the car parking spaces, for the bathrooms, for the rooms on the property, and really just try to polish this design off. So we have used Yarn to install Font Awesome, and we're just following the normal process that we've been doing of adding these details into our JavaScript file. And even if we look here at the package.json, we can see the path to access our Font Awesome directory. So what we need to do here is follow the same format that Rails is using. So we have this alias sign and then the directory path, and that should be working now. And let's test this out by adding an icon into the room section. So we should see an icon here if this works. Let's just hop on to fontawesome.com, check that our icon actually exists. We want to use the car icon, and we just add this class here. And it's still not showing, but I think this is because we forgot to add our style sheet. So if we go back to our application style sheet, we should really import styles here for Font Awesome. So let's go back to the manual or the how-to about setting this up, see if we can spot anything. Okay, here at the bottom we can see that we should be using all.css. So reference either the all.css or all.js, and so let's try to do this now from within our application style sheet. and we'll copy in this address. Let's see if that works. And yes, so we've got our car working now, our car icon. So just to round this video off, we want to have these properties that are also added by this agent, and the same styling will be on the home page where we have these latest properties. So in that latest properties section, we will include the icons to show these amenities for that property. So let's do that now. So we have this div already in place from our last video. So let's drop in our icons. And we can search for our icons on Font Awesome. So we want to grab a icon for the bathroom, and we can use this bath icon. I think that's quite good. So let's add that into our layout, and then we want to find something for bedrooms. So again, we can just use this bed icon, and we'll switch the order of these. So actually that looks quite good. We've got the bedrooms at the top, and then we've got bathroom in the middle, and then on the right side we'll have car parking spaces. So now let's add some spacing around these icons. So we can use a class with a margin right, and we'll repeat this for each of the icons. And then we can also move our address underneath the icons, and then we'll add some margin to the bottom of these icons, and it's starting to look pretty good right now. We can actually add a border to this property, each individual property entry, and maybe that will make things look a little bit nicer, but we will need to add some spacing. And we also want our property thumbnail to expand the full width of this box. So what we can do with this is we can actually set it as a background image, and then fill that background image to the full width of the div. So we'll play around with this a little bit, but I think we want each of our thumbnails to be the same height, and we want them to fill the same amount of space. So that will make our design look a lot nicer. So let's try to do that now. So we still have this white space at the side of the thumbnail. So we'll go back to our property style sheet, and we'll set a fixed height for this thumbnail. And that way we've got them all at the same height. And then we can update a new helper here. So we'll add a new helper method, and we'll return a URL from that helper method. So we can actually just add a new method for this. And it's going to be very similar to how we did the property photo background image. We just want to return the URL, and then we'll set that as a background image on the inline style sheet for that element. So we could actually wrap a link tag around this whole block so that everything inside would be linked, but in terms of like semantic markup, it's not really the best way to do that. So you shouldn't really have block level elements within inline elements. So in this case, a link is a inline element, but we will modify that in a few minutes. So first thing we want to do here is set the background image as a inline style, and we'll do that on this div. And we can add some additional style sheet rules here just to ensure that the background image is not repeating, and the position of it is in center of the image, and again that it doesn't, so the size, it just covers the whole space. So we try that now, and we'll set that to contain, and you can see here that it's not really following the rules we set, so it still looks like it's repeating, but we can inspect that element and see what's happening. And we can see on the right panel here that these styles are not being used. So if we go back to our markup, we can see that this should be background image, and then we can set this to cover this time, and that's it fixed. So basically the inline style was overruling the style sheet updates we made, but that's not working. We can correct the padding here a little bit. So we can remove the top margin on this headline of the property name, and it's starting to look pretty good right now. One thing we can also do here is change the link color, and in fact we can just move this link down into the body of this property thumb. So we'll set that in here, and then in the style sheet we will make that a max width. So display block and set a width of 100%, and again for the height. So that just means that that link will be treated like a block element, and it will fill the entire space. So everything looks to be pretty good right now, and we can click through to our property. So we can update the color of this text in these links. So to do that, we can just add a class onto the link itself. And we can also modify the color of these icons underneath. So in this case, I'm just going to go with the text muted class for each of those. And other than that, looks quite good. And to round this off, we could also just switch the icons and the numbers around just to make it match the website we're basing this on. It's a very small change and not really necessary, but maybe it'll look a little bit better for us. So let's try this out. And now the icons and text look a little bit tight, so we could add a tiny margin onto the left of each of these. Alright, so that's starting to look really good now. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this design. So what we can do now, just to round this video off, is use this same file to display a list of properties in other places on our platform. So for example, on our show view of a property profile page, at the bottom we want to have a list of properties that are also uploaded by that agent. So we can use this file again for that. And in order to do that, then we will just add some markup to the bottom of our page for the listing page, and then we'll use this partial again. We'll render this partial. So we renamed it to list instead of recent properties. And let's try this out. So in order for this properties list partial to be reusable, we need to pass in a list of properties that can be displayed when that file is loaded. So that list of properties is going to be different depending on where we use this file in our app, where we call it from. So on the home page, we will pass in an array of properties that are set in the controller. And again, on the show view of our property, we will only select properties that have got an agent ID of that existing property that we're looking at that point in time. So we can get that from the agent, so we just say agent.id, and we also don't want to show any properties. We don't want to show the property that we're looking at right now in that list. So we'll use the where.not command to do that, and we just need to make a small change to our partial. That should work. And that is working now indeed. So we can also click through those properties, and now we'll see we can click back to the one that we just came from. So that is going to do it for this video. If you guys have found this helpful, do let me know in the comments, and possibly I will be creating a part 3 for this platform, and hopefully it has given you guys something to think about if you're building your own platform. And if you subscribe to the channel, you will check out some of the other MVP builds I do. So I already have built a Craigslist clone and a very simple Instagram clone, and there's a number of other platforms I'm planning to build in the coming weeks. So do check it out, and let me know what you guys think, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the next video.